I'm Paul Gladen, director of the Blackstone Launchpad, and I'm super appreciative that Tom Snyder agreed to join us today. This is clearly a unprecedented, scary, uncertain time for everyone, and I'm sure that's especially so for Tom in an industry that's been so severely impacted by COVID-19. To share sort of how he's navigating it and his perspective. I know sort of working with entrepreneurs and having been an entrepreneur that launched a consulting business in 2008 when the economy crashed, and having clients suddenly cancel kind of contracts and things on us, I have at least some appreciation for what this can feel like. So appreciate Tom making the time and knowing that to some extent a little bit of a problem shared is a problem halved, or at least we can maybe provide some insights that can help people move forward. So Tom, I really appreciate you kind of being willing to do this. Maybe to jump in, I sort of shared some questions in advance, but sort of a slight sort of tweak on the initial question in a way is, when did you sort of realize that kind of, holy crap, this is something that's happening that we need to adjust, and sort of how have you maybe just sort of navigated your way through sort of such a rapidly changing environment?
Yeah, I mean, it happens so quickly, which is, I think, one of the most shocking things for so many business owners. For us, we really, being in Montana, we were fortunate that we started to see news come in for a few weeks, months before overseas, but a few weeks before in the US. And you started to get a sense of, this will impact us. We have to start getting ready. We have to start, not being naive to the fact that Montana will be hit.
Okay.
But it really started a week ago on Friday, I think, was when the panic really started to set in.
Yep.
And we saw, 30% sales drop on Friday. Wow. And then as soon as Saturday hit, that number went down to 50%. And then it kept going down from there every day. Wow. We've leveled out at a pretty terrible number, but at least we've leveled out to some capacity. So it was really Saturday that, our world in Montana started to change pretty drastically. Right. And that was about the time that, we started talking to healthcare providers, trying to get an understanding of, what does this really look like? What do we need to be doing to be socially responsible as a business, but stay in business? Some providers were saying everyone just needs to close their doors. Of course, we as business owners know that's not an option that we can necessarily go down.
Right.
So on Saturday night, we moved to takeout only across all of our locations on the state. We put it into place Sunday morning. We encouraged other businesses to do it as well. Yep. And by Monday afternoon, the health department had mandated it, in every county except for Cascade County was kind of the holdout, which we have a store in Great Falls. We still were doing takeout at that location. Some of the guests were more confused than other places, but we felt like we wanted to be ahead of what legislation was telling us we had to do. Right. And I think that's important as a business. The only thing that we're going to benefit from in this setting is gaining customers' trust, right, by doing things the right way.
Tom, so just we've had one chat question, which because I know you so well, I sort of assumed that people know what business you run. So can you just describe Five on Black, and for those that are not necessarily in a city or a location that has a Five on Black kind of restaurant, maybe just briefly describe what Five on Black is and does.
Yeah, so Five on Black is a fast casual Brazilian restaurant. So we do fresh, healthy, inexpensive food. We're more fortunate than a lot of restaurants in that a lot of our model is grab and go anyways. Yep. So it was an easier transition for us than a lot. So we felt like we owed it to other people to be on the front end of that transition, right, and set the stage for how things should be done. We have 5 stores across the state, 2 in Montana, 1 in Bozeman, Great Falls, and Billings.
Right. Yeah. So when you said you sort of had some obviously consciousness that kind of things were potentially going to change, but then sort of rapidly you had to sort of reconfigure. Had you gone through any kind of scenarios for what that might look like in terms of moving to just take out, or did you literally have to sort of scramble on that Saturday, Sunday to say, okay, how does this change how we operate?
We absolutely had to scramble. We had to immediately, encourage guests not to be in the dining room because it wasn't a public health mandate at that point. And that was removing all the chairs in the restaurants,
Right.
Putting signs on the door explaining why we were doing it, what we were doing. And then by Monday morning, we had put tape marks in all of the stores to encourage social distancing,
Yep.
moved all of our silverware behind the counter, any
Right.
touch points and objects. And then I think for us, it was really trying to get information across to other restaurant owners and to other people about our industry specifically and what we were doing and what restaurants are doing, and
Right.
trying to get the messaging across to handle this situation
Yep.
than just about anyone else,
Right.
especially grocery stores, which
Yep.
people are mobbing to. They're stockers, the people that are running the register, they're not accustomed to sanitizing every
Right.
surface, to hand washing
Yep.
procedures, to, the kind of sick employees being sick restrictions that we go through every year. It's part of our practice. So we absolutely we increased those practices dramatically,
Right.
putting gloves in front of the POS station and
Yep.
removing utensils and all touch points and doing extra sanitation. But part of
Yep.
it was trying to get the message out of, one, this is a safe option and potentially a safer option than a grocery store
Yep.
where
Yep.
you have hundreds of people touching surfaces, touching,
Yep.
contact points that aren't being sanitized.
Yep. Picking up produce,
And
putting it back down again, and
and
yeah.
we're like a lot of small businesses, so vulnerable right now.
Yep.
There's studies out there showing that without immediate assistance, 75% of independent restaurants will not open their doors back up.
Right.
Which is a staggering number. They employ
Yep.
13 million people, and they've
Yep.
already laid off 7 million.
Right.
So
Absolutely.
it's really affecting our industry pretty hard.
No, absolutely. I want to sort of, obviously you're a finance major, or not obviously, but you're a finance major, right? So understanding numbers is clearly something you both studied before you even started the business, because we talked about that previously. Have you what advice do you have to other sort of business owners, particularly in this sector, just in terms of sort of getting the handle on their numbers? And I can sort of share at least some what we're sort of broadly hearing from the banks in terms of how they're trying to sort of respond and help, but sort of any of your thoughts on just how businesses.
I think that's a great question. You see a lot of businesses that are have closed down because in their minds they're saying, well, we're certainly not making enough sales to pay any of our bills. So it's easier, or maybe a better option, to just close your doors.
Yep.
And I think right now we have to go through and work through numbers that we've never worked through before. And really for us specifically, it is, can we cover our cutbacks, staff, labor, and our food costs? And if we can cover just that amount, then it's worth being open, because if we can make $50 over that amount, that's, maybe a phone bill that we can pay. If the next day we can make $100 over, there's one more. So maybe we can pay 1 out of 10 bills by staying open, where if we close, we don't pay any of those bills.
Right. Yep. So if you can make this will be the accountant in me speaking, and I should say the Launchpad is more than happy to talk to entrepreneurs out there and schedule meetings, reach out to me by email, hit us up through Facebook. We're happy to talk to any entrepreneurs about sort of doing some of that cash flow analysis. But essentially your point is, if you can make a margin on the product that covers your sort of direct variable costs, therefore as a contribution to some of those fixed costs, then that makes sense to do that.
Yeah. And even on the most basic level of saying, okay, if we cut back our staff to, 30 hours a day per location, and we're paying them $11 an hour, we need to make more than that. And then for us, it is, to cover our food cost of what's going out the door. So it's our volume, times, 65% plus that number. So if we can get over that, which is a lower number than a lot of people think it is, it's worth being open. And we have an obligation to our communities to still provide them goods and services during this time.
Yeah. That's super helpful, and actually mirrors what we tell startups, which is don't try to forecast the future. Try to understand what are the assumptions for the future that would enable you to be viable as a startup, or in this instance, how
and right now it's, are you viable day to day?
Right. Yeah. So how many
you cover those?
How many bowls do you have to sell?
Basic costs.
Right. How many bowls do you have to sell each day to kind of keep the lights on, essentially?
Yeah. And then, get rid of a lot of those other costs, because those are going to exist whether we open or close. I still will have to pay those utility bills, those phone bills, my rent payments, my debt service. Those aren't going to go away. hopefully we can put extensions on some of those. We can ask for rent
Absolutely.
relief to our landlords, but
Yep. Yep.
the answer is we'll see, because they're
Sure.
in a
Yep.
position where they don't know if they can give relief because they're held to investors and loans
Right.
and the
Yep.
same things that we are.
Well, so I just want to touch on that. I mean, you said rent relief and correctly said, well, that sort of depends on what's the ability of the landlord. So the landlord obviously may have kind of mortgages and loans backing up, or entrepreneurs themselves may have direct loans for their own business. What at least we're hearing from the banks is in many instances, they're able to defer any of the payments on those loans. So that can give some relief for some period of time. So, I mean, my one piece of advice to any entrepreneur, if they've got any kind of loan with a bank, go talk to your bank. It may be, you may be scared or worried about what they're going to say, but actually it's in their best interest to try to help you.
Banks are the easiest people that we can talk to right now. I think almost every bank is going to say, absolutely, we can do 4 months of deferred payments and put it on the back end of your loan, which, you know, you're still paying for it, of course, but at least you get some cash flow relief. And that's what all of us really need right now is cash flow relief.
Yeah, cool. Let me switch gears about something else you did, because you talked a little bit about sort of just moving to takeout, but you've also now have delivery. You maybe talk us through the sort of that decision and how you got that set up and configured.
Yeah, again, you know, I think this is part of, you know, you have to always be looking at the trends of where your industry is going beforehand, which thankfully in our case, that set us up for where we're at right now. You know, in delivery and online orders and pickup, that's a trend within our industry that's been ongoing for the last couple of years. So we had Uber Eats set up, we had online orders set up, pickup options. So it was really just the act of deferring all of those systems that we had in place and encouraging people to use them. Where we were doing 1-2 online orders a day, and now we're doing half of our sales through it.
Right. Okay. So you were already doing that, but you were able to build on that. Do you have, given you made that transition and had the time by the sounds of things, therefore, to sort of work your way through it? Any kind of tips for those businesses that, because we're seeing a lot of that, obviously food service, that are like, yeah, we've got takeout, but you've got to phone in the order, or kind of you've got to go pick it up. So any tips just for how to make that transition for online ordering and delivery?
I think that a lot of people's POS providers they have easy site plugins that you can put into your website in order to create online orders that goes right through your POS. I think everyone should be setting those up right away, and it's not a hard process to do. And then, you know, there's a lot of people are doing delivery on their own, and some people have to do it on their own. But Uber Eats, DoorDash, Grubhub, Postmates, there's a lot of options out there, and they're doing as good of a job as they can of getting people onboarded really quickly. And I think that's, you know, do that now rather than waiting a week, because this isn't going anywhere.
Right. No, absolutely. Can you maybe talk a little bit about how you've handled this with your employees? It sounded like you'd had to cut your payroll, so you probably had to lay some employees off, but how have you sort of navigated both that process and or with those employees that are obviously still working with you, how you've helped them?
Yeah, you know, at this point, you know, we'll probably have to move a lot more people to partial unemployment or to unemployment. You know, we've been trying to avoid that as long as possible to keep people's hours and try to get enough just in the door to pay the people that are there. You know, for us, on Saturday, we started, you know, a big group message with all of our GMs, all of our assistant managers. We sent a message out to all of the staff informing them what was happening, but we're relying on communicating very heavily with the top people in the stores that then need to focus on getting that communication downward. So we're giving them daily updates on what CDC standards are, any changes if there are any, what things need to be happening in the store, what things need to be focused on. So we're communicating with them daily on all of our stores in a format to try to really keep them positive and help them understand, why are we open? What are they doing? You know, what is the impact on other people? And, you know, helping them understand the social components of it, because I think that's important. And then what are we doing in order to make them feel safe and for their staff to feel safe? Because, you know, the first couple of days, I was more of a therapist than I was a business owner working with our staff. But most of that was, people needed to be comforted. They needed to know why you were doing the things you were doing, how they were being kept safe. what our standards and policies were, and getting those in front of people before they were questions was important, I think, in creating trust.
Right.
That the people that were making the decisions were making decisions that were best for them and not what was best for the business. And we tried to put them before what we were doing.
Right. So if you, this sort of leads into a follow-up question around sort of the customer experience, because it makes sense to me. I know you and I have sort of talked previously about some of your philosophy of the business, and that sort of the customer experience is so important, but obviously it's having sort of happy, well-motivated, engaged employees. It's about delivering that. So that seems
we've always put staff before customers, because they are more important than our customers. And if we treat them well and we communicate with them well, that's going to translate into what they're giving the customers. And that was hyper important right now, to get that communication in front of them. And doing that, you just can't communicate with everyone, and we can't do it all the time. So we have to rely on the key people to keep the energy positive, keep our policies in place, let people know changes are happening every day, because every day there's changes and moving parts.
And you said you're communicating sort of through kind of chat messaging, Slack.
We're doing it just through a big group text message. And we're doing that instead of email, to make sure that people are getting it immediately, that they can respond immediately. We're having our regional manager call all of our GMs and AMs, every day or two, just to check in. I'm calling them just more so to see how are they doing, how's their well-being, how are they, are they feeling all right? If staff or them aren't feeling all right about something, then we change it immediately, and we figure it out and we fix it.
Right. Given the importance of the customer experience, and given now you've got a bunch of customers that are sort of ordering online and or even getting delivery, have you changed anything there in terms of how you're sort of engaging or interacting with customers?
A lot of our stores now are on delivery orders. They're writing notes of thank you for supporting local business. They're trying to put extra things on the to-go bags to just have a little personal touch, because we're in a time right now where there is no personal connection. We have so much of it through social media, but we're completely deprived of it really in our lives. So having that physical connection, even just with a note or a comment, I think makes people realize and appreciate, wow, these are people who are trying to keep their jobs and trying to get paid and trying to keep their full benefits.
No, absolutely.
And and another way that I think we encourage our staff and help them understand some of the greater significance of what's going on and how people are being affected, and how we engaged our customers, and we're able to bring in some extra sales to help keep our staff going, was, we started encouraging people to pre-buy meals at cost that we would donate out to different different organizations, like shelters and, Ronald McDonald House. And so we're up to, 1,700 bowls meals that are going out across the state. And we've sent out about half of those already. And we've got the rest of them lined up. And, for our staff, it was important to communicate, we're doing this because there are families that are getting turned away at the shelters or at these houses. There's kids that aren't in the school systems that don't have good home lives, that are potentially being abused, that don't have food in front of them. So it's our obligation to get food in the hands of people that don't have anything right now. I think it was a good reminder for our staff too, of people have it worse. And,
absolutely.
And we need to be helping them. And I think it helped empower them at work too. And, gave all of us a little sense of purpose in a time where sometimes it feels like there isn't any.
No, it's phenomenal. I applaud you greatly for doing that. It's one of the reasons I reached out to you was not only sort of how you adapted the business, but I'm on your newsletter and saw that you were doing that. I think it's just awesome that you're doing that. Got about 7 or 8 minutes left. I've got a couple of questions through kind of the chat here. One sort of circling back just to sort of DoorDash, Uber Eats. What's that process look like to kind of start working with them? Is it fairly seamless, or is there a bunch of things you've got to be ready to deal with?
It's pretty straightforward. So, they send you a tablet, and, you get your menu to them. They put the menu on the back end. And then you basically turn the tablet on, you're activated. Orders come
Right.
through on the tablet. It gives you a ring.
Yeah.
What we do is we take it from there and
Yeah.
we write the order down on one of the
Yep.
lids, make the bowl, you hit order accepted, and then we go ring it into our POS to make sure that we're
Mm.
tracking it. And we ring it through as 100% discount. So we can
Mm.
tie it in on the back end when we get those statements to make sure we're putting in what they're saying we ordered. And, they do charge a 30% fee on our end, taking
Right.
30% of those sales. But, you're probably going to have to pay a staff member a lot more
Yep.
to go deliver those meals
Right.
yourself.
Yep.
So yes, it's in normal life, those are just incremental sales that we're
Yeah.
doing with our existing staff.
Yeah.
So, we're potentially making a better margin off of those than we
Yep.
are in-store sales because it's all incremental. Now it's a big portion of our business, but it's easy to get going. A lot of them, Uber Eats was the first, and I applaud them for this. They started doing $0 delivery fees
Yep.
for customers,
Right.
for local restaurants to help encourage
Yeah.
your mom and pop place. So
Cool.
it's an easy process. It takes
Yep.
a couple days to get things to you really quickly and walk you
Okay.
through it. They're pretty bogged down, so it takes a little bit
Yep.
longer now. But
Yep. Yep. Cool.
Uber Eats is the best, I think, if you're going to choose
Okay.
one of them. We've worked with all of them before.
Right. Okay. Cool. So it's from Carter. I recently saw Roy Choi's famous Kogi food truck, although I confess it's not famous enough that I know it, but that's probably just by sheltered life. He's combating his restaurant closure by using the truck as a drive-through. You seeing other restaurateurs, entrepreneurs who went the food truck route, not being hit as hard as those, the brick and mortar? Any of their thoughts on food trucks, drive-throughs?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great model. I think it's a great idea that if you can move to that and encourage people to come in and feel safe, because that's
Yep.
really what we're
Yep.
trying to do is make our customers feel safe and
Right.
know that they're in a good environment to not have a lot of contact points. So that's a great option. Um, you know, the big problem is there's not people out, and
Right.
they're not moving around the town
Yep.
very frequently.
Yep.
So I think food trucks are probably hit harder than we are because
Right.
they rely so heavily on kind of walk by traffic. They don't
Right.
have that
Yep.
brand name
Yep.
recognition. And, so if you have a brick and mortar store and a food truck and you're thinking, I'll close down my brick and mortar and just move to my food truck, I would say we need to keep our brick and mortar open as long as we can.
Right.
We need to keep building customer loyalty and customer
Yep.
confidence in our brick
Yep.
and mortar stores.
Cool.
And if we close it, then we don't have the ability to do that.
Yeah. A follow-up question on the kind of because you talked about sort of the sanitation and helping kind of customers feel comfortable. The question is relating to the delivery process. Do you know what sort of the Uber Eats and others are doing to help sort of ensure that sanitation of that delivery process?
Yeah, they have a lot of standards in place that they put on their drivers in order to encourage that, but we can't rely on them to be doing it for us.
Right.
So, we've moved to making sure that after we bag up those orders that we staple them shut with the receipt,
Yep.
So there's kind of, we've already ordered some no tamper stickers that will go
Yep.
on those bags
Great.
to make sure that they haven't been opened, because the last thing you want a customer to think is, oh, that's been sitting in some Uber guy's car and it's
Right.
wide open and he's, coughing all over it. So, doing things on our end to make sure that we're not relying on other people who are handling our food to do their job correctly.
Right. Cool. Carter, thanks you for the response to the food truck question.
Yeah.
Let me, we got like 3 minutes left. So let me sort of ask in some ways a sort of wrap up question, and maybe we'll try to be positive about kind of how we navigate our way through this, and that kind of the upturn at some point, the recovery will happen. Is there anything sort of positive that's come out of this for you in terms of sort of, and whatever that is, that you sort of say, well, this has been a learning experience, or that it's forced you to do something different, or that you just take away from this that you think will help the business in the future?
I think that the communication we've been able to have with our staff has been the most important thing. I
Right.
think that the kind of confidence in each other with our management teams and the people in our stores has been probably the biggest thing, that as we come out of this, there's going to be such a level of trust within
Right.
our four walls, and hopefully with our customers too, that extends out into better things moving forward. And then the last thing that I think, we started to hit on this a little bit before, and probably what people are wondering and thinking about is, well, where do we go from here? And what does legislation look like? And how do we get money? And how do we make it through? With pretty grim standards moving forward, what does that look like? And, unfortunately, I think the legislation doesn't go far enough at all. It does for hourly employees, which it absolutely needs to. And that was so important that they did that. People can get 100% of their paycheck potentially, and then we'll get an influx of money through checks that are written and sent to doorstep. So, people can move them to unemployment, make sure that they're putting job attached under there so they don't have to look. This isn't affecting our rates. It's being put into the general fund and not individual store. So it's not hurting us to move them there. If they're losing hours, then they can get partial unemployment. And I think all these options are important. But for small businesses, the legislation is basically, it allows us to get payroll relief. And then the loan is forgiven based on over the next 8-week period, based on 2 prior periods you're choosing. But if you don't hit those number of FTEs, that's the percentage of the loan that's forgiven. Now the loan can be used for rent and expenses and utilities and other items, but that portion of it doesn't get forgiven, which, it kind of sounded like in the legislation it would, that you get, a chunk of 3 to 4 months that would be forgiven based on expenses. It's really just payroll. So, when you're looking at that, it makes it even more important to stay open and to try to bring in money, because we can get payroll relief, but you're not getting relief for anything else. Those bills aren't going to go away. So we have to get rent relief, and different ways of doing that is, can we at least get rent relief for 3 to 4 months and amortize that over the remaining term of our lease? That's a very reasonable request. If you can get more than that and say, can we have half of that forgiven and amortize the rest over, that's even better. But, the $350 billion, unfortunately, doesn't go far enough for small businesses. And then it's put through the SBA loan program, and you have to get in line, and it's first come, first serve. And when it's out, it's out. So I would encourage everyone, call your banker now and say, I need to make sure that I'm on the list of people that are being contacted for, the SBA, payroll relief, because at least it's something. It's not enough, and it's not going to save a lot of people, but you need to be on the front end of getting that money before it's not there. And, I hate to make that sound like a panic situation, but in some ways I think it is. I think the people who are on top of it, they're going to get more help than the people that drag their feet.
And I would just add, our colleague Jen Stevens, who's the director for the Missoula SBDC here, encourage, and we can kind of, again, she will share details through our Facebook page as well of how to find Jen. She's on top of, it's a rapidly changing, as you've said, everything here is changing kind of hourly, daily. But Jen is as much on top of that as we can be in terms of what those different programs kind of look like.
And as small business owners, we pay attention to legislation here and there, but I think it's more important than ever that we all need to be really following what this small business relief looks like, trying to get some information and synopsis on it, and being as proactive as we can, because that's one of the most important things we can be doing. And then we need to be calling our senators and our legislators. And I've done that to say, this bill for small businesses does not go far enough, because it frankly, it doesn't.
And actually, there's a survey.
That's not as positive a note to leave on, but
but
maybe
it's important that
do more. We need to do more.
Actually, the Missoula Chamber as well has a survey out there. I think we've got it on our Facebook page, but also if people just go to the Missoula Chamber, there's a survey there where they're gathering input, and they're consistently feeding that back to kind of Montana's congressional delegation as well. So I'd encourage people to do that. And we absolutely want to hear from people. Our scheduling link is in the chat message here, but again, go to the Blackstone Launchpad. It's umt.edu/launchpad. and just reach out to us. We're happy to chat to anyone, try to connect them. If we don't know the answer, which we don't know all the answers to these things, but we try to help people find those answers or kind of think through stuff. So, Tom, we've gone past the 30 minutes now. You've got other stuff to go to. And I just really appreciate you kind of sharing kind of this incredibly stressful, unprecedented environment, how you've navigated. I think
we're all in it
helpful.
together, and we'll all get out of it together.
And just encourage people to go to 5 on Black and order a bowl.
Yeah, please do. Every sale helps. And if anyone has any other questions, or even about legislation that's coming through and what that looks like, you feel free to reach out to me too.
Great. We may circle back and help you, have you help us navigate some of those things for some of our entrepreneurs. So maybe we'll schedule something in the next week or two. But,
all right. Well, thank you guys. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Tom. Thanks, everyone. Appreciate your time. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.